Coming up, how to position yourself ahead of reporting season, US tech stocks tank, and what next week's inflation numbers mean for the RBA. It's your daily 10-minute business and finance news wrap for this Friday, the 21st of July, 2023. We'll have a bit of a shorter podcast today as the S&P ASX 200 falls 0.11%, 7,316. For more, I spoke with Marcus Bogdan. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Blackmore Capital.
Well, today it's been the technology and financial stocks that have been considerably weaker. Based on weaker than expected results in the US. And those two sectors have actually been the strongest over the last month or so. So there's been a rotation out of financials and technology shares today into consumer staples, healthcare and energy, which have previously been laggards for the month.
All right, in terms of the US, we saw numbers from Netflix and Tesla, shares in both of those two companies down considerably overnight. What exactly didn't investors like about it? Or is it time just for a pullback given that tech stocks have done spectacularly well so far this year?
I think it's a combination of both. Tesla's guidance and sales revenue were below expectation. And then for Tesla, it was their profit margins which were lower than expected. But putting this into context, the Nasdaq has risen over 30% for this year. So I think it is a healthy pullback when expectations were particularly high. And the US PE on the technology stocks is at a 20-year high. So this is a healthy pullback in that market.
Reporting season in the US is ticking along, but in Australia, corporate earnings really start being posted to the market from next week. Rio Tinto, the first major company out of the blocks. What are the themes this profit reporting season that you think will be in focus?
I think there's been a building up of caution around analysts in terms of this reporting season. There'll be question marks around sales momentum, the ability of companies to be able to push prices through, which they've been incredibly successful over the last year or so. There'll be an emphasis looking at the cost side of the businesses. What has the higher interest rates done in terms of interest expense, and an expectation that maybe the margins have now peaked for Australian corporates. So I think that the guidance given by companies will be particularly of interest. How cautious they are and how willing are they to talk about what they expect over the next year or so.
So as an investor, how do you position yourself ahead of corporate reporting season, and where do you see the opportunities at the moment?
Well, we are more cautious around economic activity and corporate earnings. And so we want to be positioned in defensive industrial shares, those companies that are resilient through the economic cycle, and the healthcare sector as well, which has been substantially weaker over this year. And we believe that that is an area where there will be profit growth going forward.
A key economic event will be next week. We'll get some inflation numbers. We know that inflation around the world, as we saw this week, is falling in the US, in the UK, even in New Zealand. We saw better than expected employment figures out of Australia yesterday. What's the market now saying about how all of this will play out for the Reserve Bank when it comes to meet in about a fortnight, and for the potential for peak rates? Because like I said, the unemployment numbers are pretty strong. What's the inflation figures likely to say?
We do expect to see an easing of Australian CPI, which is consistent of what we're seeing around in other Western economies. But it is a balance because employment remains very strong, migration levels are high. And so there is expectation that there will be one further interest rate rise for the RBA this year.
Marcus Bogdan there from Blackmore Capital.
This SBS On The Money stream is provided for informational purposes only. The content in this stream should not be understood as constituting advice or a recommendation. It is not personal advice and it does not consider your personal circumstances or objectives. You should contact a licensed professional before making any financial decision.